I'm a big goal setter and a big goal getter, and I teach goals. One of the things I think that happens with folks is that we don't celebrate and take time to celebrate even when we do achieve. Like when we break the tape and win the medal, when in the Olympics, they work hard, 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 and then they break the tape. Then the goal is they celebrate and they're celebrated and they do that. In our world, I mean, I just had a meeting with my own staff today and who've been doing some remarkable things. And we've launched this big initiative called a Do It Now campaign. And it's taken an extraordinary amount of work. And all kinds of departments had to come together. And I sat in this meeting, and all these people are tired. They're a little beat up. It took so much work. It's brilliant for our customers. But they're on to the next thing. And I said, we need to take a moment to celebrate what we've done here, because you got to be content with your achievements and what you have done. Otherwise, you have no chance. And this kind of segues for me to something I saw in the book, which was this whole dynamic of the counterfeit financial culture. And I just think it's a great insight. Nobody's really talking about that. And maybe you could address that for folks for a second.
Sure. We have a lot of healthy dialogue at this point around how absurd the images we're seeing in social media are.
Right.
But what we're not having is conversation about how absurd the images we see regularly on TV shows and film are. And by that I mean, if you take any TV show, a police, a legal, a medical drama, and you look at the characters and you look at how they are dressed
Mm.
and what cars they drive, what homes they live in, how they socialize. I literally went back in a number of these different shows and movies and took a look at how much the average pay was for these different professions. And then I calculated what it would cost to groom and live like them. And what I found is almost without exception, you would have to earn 30 to 50% more
Mm.
than those positions pay to live like that.
Mm.
So when we look in almost every direction now at life, we are comparing ourselves to something that is counterfeit.
Right. Yeah, that's the old story, right? I've told this story before. I had a hangar for an airplane, and it was a model for the people we shared the hangar with was a company called St. John's Knit, famous clothing line, and the model for St. John's Knit was getting on the plane, and there were posters of her all around the hangar, and she didn't look like anything like the posters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, when you don't look like you, but that's the image you're portraying, so many people are trying to do that. And again, identity is such a hot topic these days. What car you drive, where you live, what the neighbors do. It seems like keeping up with the Joneses has been weaponized. And you talk about this in your book, that's kind of the 3 reasons why it's easier to fall prey to that than ever before. And I think this would be very practical for people because, people know there's a problem and they know they're feeling financial stress. Right now, in the middle of this, we've had, record interest rates. We have a downturn in the economy, and yet debt is at an all-time high. People have maintained their level of spending. In fact, last year was the highest amount of credit ever accumulated in American history, and 50% of it happened in the last 2 months of the year, which meant people spent the same amount of money at Christmas and the holidays that they were going to as if they had money, and they just financed it at 20-some% interest rates. So, on a practical level, it's showing up in the marketplace right now. The consumer is still spending, which Wall Street's happy about, but it's a lot of spending on credit. And so why are people putting themselves in that difficult situation? They know it's problematic. They know it's stressful. I owe, so off to work I go. So maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of why people are falling into the keeping up with the Joneses more than ever before.
There are 3 reasons, and the first is that personal finance isn't taught. I went to
Mm.
Harvard Business School. They teach corporate finance, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't teach personal finance. And
Yep.
I have many friends who have graduated and are
Mm-hmm.
struggling with
Yep.
just managing their personal finances because they weren't taught this skill.
Yep.
And they live in a world where debt is not considered a quote 4-letter word in the
Yeah.
sense that
Right.
certain other words are considered that. It's considered a, a tool that is not detrimental.
Right.
The second reason is that the financial landscape has gotten geometrically more complex than it was, say, 50 years ago. 50 years ago, if you wanted to buy a home, you had to put 20%
Hmm.
or more down, and the banks cared about how you were going to pay that back because they kept those loans on their books.
Hmm.
As we started doing things like securitizing mortgages and so forth, lending standards got to the point where it was very easy
Yeah.
and profitable to lend people more money than they can afford. And then that moved into credit cards and home equity lines of credit and so forth. And then the third factor, so you're not educated, widely speaking, anyone.
Hmm.
You've got this complicated set of choices
Hmm.
to select from. And now you've got easy access to credit because it's a very profitable industry.
Hmm.
And I think that middle piece is really important, that geometric increase in complexity, because people don't know what they don't know, and
Right.
oftentimes end up in very dangerous
Right.
financial situations
Well, you
that
think,
they didn't have the opportunity to 50 years ago.
well, when we do our events, we teach goal setting, time management, and financial budgeting. All three things are not taught in any major school, in any of the best schools. And I've talked at these different universities, and they're the most basic things. So in our coaching program, long term, we won't coach someone who won't adhere to a budget. And the reason being is we have all these fantastic lead generation things, grow their business. But no matter what, if you don't control your finances, there's no way to win. There's just no way to win. They must be controlled. And you must have now. There's people who don't like the term budget because they come from a family background like you talked about. There's trauma or cultural norms or societal, and they feel controlled by it. Their mom was super worried about money, so everything was control. So we go, okay, we're going to call it a spending plan.
Yeah.
But either way, there has to be financial controls in place. Otherwise, you will spend more than you make. The culture is incentivized to have you spend more than you make. Hey, no payments for 6 months, no payments for a year. And now you're dealing with interest rates that are the highest we've seen in decades. And so we're having people spiral down. That's why I do believe the timing of your message, the timing of the book is critical. People know they have a problem. People know their lifestyles are out of whack. Thanks for watching. If you want more tips on how to think, feel, and do better, check out these videos too. Oh, by the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a like if you enjoyed the content.